Hello, thank you for stopping by. Today I'm going to give you a few updates on my progress with the tweed jacket I am making from this lovely linen tweed, this sort of cocoa brown grayish tweed that I am in love with. First, I wanted to mention that in my last Friday Sews video, I was finishing up a shirt and I am wearing it now. It is complete and super comfy. This might be my new favorite shirt. I love this wool rayon blend, and I think it just came out really nicely. I'm super happy with the fit. Other than the arms are just a little bit longer than I would have preferred, but not terribly so. There just ends up being a little bit of bagginess here that I could do without. If I ever get motivated enough, I'm going to just take the cuffs off and then shorten the sleeve like half an inch to an inch. But I don't know, I might just leave it like this. It's super comfy. For the jacket this last week, I traced off all of the pattern pieces. As an example, this is what the front piece looks like with this sort of thin, almost tissue paper I used for tracing it. This is my big roll of tracing paper. I've had this for a while now. I normally buy smaller rolls, but last time I was looking online, they didn't have really any smaller rolls in the width I wanted, so I just ended up buying like, I don't know how many yards this is, like 20 yards of it or something. It comes in handy and it's just about the width of my table, so I can just, roll it out and it comes out. It's really easy to trace the pattern underneath. This is one of the pattern sheets. There are 3 of these in the book I'm working from, all double-sided. So I just, laid one of these sheets down and then rolled this bad boy over on top of it and traced away and then just cut off the piece and kept going as needed. Pretty simple process. On these multi-pattern sheets, each pattern is a different color, which actually makes it fairly easy to see through the tracing paper and follow along with the pattern you need. It just looks confusing at first, but once you get started, it's pretty easy to do. I decided to use the large size pattern for this jacket, and I did not make a mock-up, which I hope will not bite me in the butt. But all of the measurements for the jacket seem to be in line with the measurements from this shirt. They both came from this book, The Gentleman's Wardrobe. I just want to reiterate in case you didn't see my video last week. And this is the large size shirt. And it fits me comfortably, again, like I said, except maybe being a little bit long in the sleeve. But that's super easy to correct, especially in a jacket that doesn't have the sleeve placket. Looking at the measurements for the jacket being similar to the measurements for the shirt, and I like the fit of the shirt, and it looks like the jacket is drafted in a very similar style to the shirt, which would make sense with them both coming from the same pattern drafter and the same book. I decided to just risk it and not make a mock-up. So I just dug right into cutting out my fashion fabric and getting started on construction. In the last Friday Sews video, I talked more about this book and I talked a little bit more about the fabric that I am using for the shell, the lining, and a little bit about the interfacing. So if you didn't see that, it is linked in the description below, so you can go catch up on that after you're finished with this one if you're interested. A couple of other details about the supplies I'm using for this project. I just got some 116 Schmetz needles that I am using for sewing the main fabric. Just because it's a little bit thicker, I wanted a heavier needle. I could probably get away with smaller needles because this is more of a medium weight fabric rather than a heavyweight coating, but these seem to be working fine. For the construction seams of the shell of the jacket, I am just using Coats & Clark dual duty polyester thread, black. I always keep black. It seems like a pretty useful one to have. For the fabric, or the lining of the fabric, for the lining of the jacket, which is this lighter cream colored, I am just going to use some 7010 Schmetz needles that I already had. I didn't have to buy more of those. And I'm using a white polyester Coats & Clark dual duty thread. I usually just try to keep white and black thread and use those for the construction seams of anything that's not going to be seen. And then buy like specialty top stitching thread as needed. And I actually did buy some brown top stitching thread to use for the jacket. This was a fairly cheap cone of thread. It's not a brand I've heard of before, but I decided to give it a try because it's like 1,800 like yards of thread or something, like ridiculous, for like $8. And you know, it's doing a really good job. It's a heavy duty thread for I'm using for top stitching, and it's coming out really nicely. I've done some practice. It looks nice on the fabric, and it seems to be sewing well. So I'm pretty happy with it. The issue is that it's big, huge cone. So I have not been able to get it to really work well on any of my machines. I've sort of rigged it to where it works kind of on one machine, but I end up just like pulling off like a lot of extra thread and then using it and then pulling extra thread, then using it rather than, you know, allowing this to spin freely as the machine goes like it's supposed to. But I did just order a spool holder that should be coming tomorrow that I can put this on to use from. And I might, you know, consider switching all of my threads to these big cones if I can find ones that are a better value and just use the secondary spool holder rather than the small machine thread holder. We'll see how it goes. So let's come take a look at the table. I've got all of the pieces laid out here, and man, there are a lot of them. So I have my front and side pieces here. These are the two that I have been working on already. I have back and front facing pieces here. Also the sleeved shell materials. I've got the pieces here. This is for the front pockets, which I'm about to start on. Right here I have the collar. And here I have the pile of pieces, which will be the lining. Let's talk about what I've been doing on the front pieces here, construction-wise. I attached all of the interfacing to the pieces, which, like I mentioned in my last video, is a synthetic HIMO. And rather than pad stitching everything in or using a fusible, I just sewed it in around the edges. Not ideal, but once I get all of the different things sewn on, it'll be fine. The issue I ran into with using a sew-in interfacing rather than the fusible interfacing that the pattern called for was this edge of the interfacing was loose. It wasn't held down at all. So I just went through and just prick stitched the interfacing down on this side. So it doesn't show through on the other side at all. I used some brown thread I had, and it blends in pretty perfectly with the front of it. So where the stitches do come through a little bit, I can't see them, which is the entire idea of prick stitching. So that's what I did there. And then I got lazy later on. You can see here, there's this edge that is not prick stitched. I just started using fusible tape to hold down the edges of the interfacing. I put darts in the two front pieces and pressed them towards the center. Looking at the right sides of the front here, first of all, you can tell that I did go through and I thread marked all of the dots and things on the fabric rather than just sticking to chalk. When there are this many pieces and I've had to handle them and move them more than I want, the chalk could get rubbed off and it could get confusing. So I did go through and thread mark everything, even though it took forever and it was obnoxious. I went ahead and did that. The very first step I did after I interfaced everything and made the darts was the front, like upper pocket welt on the front left side. So that's this pocket right here. And it's tiny. It's big enough to put a pocket square in or maybe a couple of pins. I wanted to make it wide enough for a cell phone. It won't fit a cell phone. So I'll make sure my inner pocket will fit that. I'm okay with how this welt came out. It's not great. I need to work on welts a little bit. I'm not great at getting them super nice and tidy. But coming back to the back side, you can see the pocket here from the other side. It's a decent pocket, you know, it's not terrible, but could be better. After the front left pocket was done, I just attached the side pieces to the fronts, making a nice seam. And for seam finishing, I just overcast each seam allowance separately and then pressed it flat just to help keep that from getting too bulky. I'm going to try to press open the seams. Sometimes I will, press the seams to one side and overcast them together and then top stitch from the outside and sort of like a mock felled seam. I like the way it looks. It gives it structure, and sometimes it gives it a nice like crisp look. It sort of stitches in the like crisp ironed look. But I'm worried about this just getting too thick. I think pressing the seams open and flat is going to be the best idea. Also, that's what it says in the directions, so I was just following those. So it seems like I am not very far along in this project yet. I am at step 10 out of 52 steps. But anybody who's done any sewing project knows that the prep time is sometimes longer than the actual construction time. I don't think it will be quite that situation here. It's going to be a lot of fussy construction. I'm just ready to get through the pockets. I hate making pockets. I like having pockets. I hate making pockets. But yeah, my next steps are to make the front lower pockets, which will go sort of partially onto the side and onto the front. So the pocket itself will go over a seam. That's another reason why those seams need to be pressed open rather than doubled up. Is there's going to be a pocket going through there, and trying to get through a double thick seam with like a ripper or whatever would be, for slashing open the pocket would be hard. Anyway, so I got to get these 2 more pocket welts made on either side. Then it's going to be adding the fronts and backs and the shoulder seams. So once I get through the pockets, it's going to move more into the territory of like traditional construction that makes sense, front to back, shoulder seams, add the collar, add on the sleeves. Then we go to the inside pocket, which is going to be annoying again, but what are you going to do? After that, it goes to constructing the lining and attaching the lining to the shell. So if I can get through the pockets, it's going to be a period of smooth sailing until I get to another pocket. That is all I have for you today on the construction. But before we go, I have some fabric that I wanted to ask people's opinions about. I found this fabric at the thrift store and I was debating getting it or not, but it was like, I don't know, $5, $6. Actually, it was a half price day. It was like the color tag was on half price. So it was like $2 or $3. And I just couldn't pass it up, but I don't know what to do with it. Let's see, here's the tag. All right, I lied. It was $9.20 at half price. So it was $4.60. Does that whatever. So it's this, it's actually quite a lovely color. I like this sort of, I don't know what type of blue you would call this, cerulean, I don't know. It is a very plastic fabric, like a nylon kind of. It's almost feels like a synthetic taffeta, but more like a backpack or like utilitarian sort of feel to it. I have no idea what to do with it. I thought about making a jacket with it, like a rain jacket. I don't think it is necessarily waterproof, but I could, with lining and maybe some different waterproof coatings, I could make a rain resistant raincoat out of this. If I had any big bench that needed to be covered, I would use that. But I have this fabric and I don't know what to do with it. So if anybody has any suggestions for me, please let me know in the comments. I have quite a lot of this. It is 60 inches wide and I have not figured out how long this is yet. It is heavy. It is heavier than some of the sewing machines I have. And it's a nice color. It's a really heavy, durable fabric. I can make something cool out of it. I just don't know what. Thinking I might make a bag out of it. That might be kind of nice. That is all for now. I will be back next week with more updates on the progress with this tweed jacket. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the future.